Fresh off comments from GM now, Tom Moore. We're going to talk about UConn's roster and the new blueprint. You're on the Hoops Cap. Welcome into the Hoops Cap Pod. I am your host, Mark Zanetto, here with me a couple times a week, Bella Tamano, on campus, on location, and Stores, Connecticut. Bella, appreciate you being here. We're sponsored today by our friends, Joey Bail Bonds. You know Joey, you've probably seen him at games, typically on the floor with floor seats. Yes, Joey's a high roller. And if you're in trouble, you've made a mistake, or there's been a mistake that's gotten you into some hot water, maybe it wasn't your fault. Doesn't matter. I don't care what happened. Call 860-916-6747. He'll take care of getting you out so you can figure out your next move. We hope you don't need him, but it's always good to have options. So take that number, put it in your phone, just in case. I'm sure Bella sees a lot of activity on campus sometimes that may require some Joey Bail Bonds activity. So feel free to take our advice and help us there and help you out there. All right, Bella. So I had the pleasure of having being on the call for GM Tom Moore, now transitioning to a full-time GM. Now that they've gotten Mike Nardi as an assistant. So the reason why this happened is for the last 2 years, Tom has really done both jobs, like done not all of the roster construction, because Danny and all of them are involved in it, but a ton of it, identifying talent, where the guys should go, the scheduling, all of the tasks that a general manager has between bye games and multi-team events and neutral site games. It's a lot. So for him to be on the sidelines too and be traveling with the team, that's something that he didn't feel that he needed to do anymore. And I think the interesting part is on the call, we talked to him about that transition. And so we're going to play a couple clips of or audio of what it was like. But the first obvious question to you, Bella, is how weird is it to be in college and to have one of the teams has a GM, like a general manager? Because you're a pro sports fan, so like,
yeah.
How does that sit with you?
It's just like it's crazy to think about, because I mean, it's kind of special though. You know what I'm saying? It shows like what this program has built over the years, and it shows like how serious they are. You know what I'm saying? Like I think that I think it was a long time coming though for a program like UConn. You know what I'm saying? I think like we said, Tom was doing double duty, but I think the pieces are finally falling into place behind the scenes, and I think it was about time for them to get something like this. But it is very cool. It's something you don't see too often.
Yeah, and this is no disrespect to Tom, because I'm an old guy too, but like as far as like coaching goes, he's getting up there in age. Like in terms of, it's a young man's game. Like Mike Nardi comes in, I think he's a couple years younger than me. You still have Luke and Kamani in their early 40s, late 30s, and so it's a grind. I'll give you one example, and then I'll go to Tom's. The first response that I got from Tom in one of my questions was, I have some friends who were in the college basketball world, and one of them recently got out of it, probably two years ago. And when he left his job, the coach, who will remain nameless, hired 5 people to fill all of the different roles that he was doing, because he was working as an assistant, as a behind the scenes. This is a high major program, so it wasn't like, it just is what it is. Like that's when Dan Hurley says things like, I need to respect you and your work ethic to come work for us, or I won't hire you. And that's what we're talking about. Mm-hmm. And you don't find very many people that work harder than college basketball coaches or coaches in general at the college level, because they're there day and night. So one of the first questions I asked was, he mentioned a few things. They're filling out the back end of the roster. I asked about, because we did a list of Baba Miller and a few other kind of like, not necessarily big impact players, but essentially guys that could challenge for minutes. And also some guys who are still in the NBA draft process. So my first question was around that. Like, how, if someone comes back from the draft process, Is UConn going to be involved in any of those discussions? And then I want you to react to this question.
Mark, no, I don't see that anymore. We've those young men that are still in the draft process and may come back to college will probably command an extremely high NIL value, and we're not in that market anymore for the rest of this 25, 26 roster. So
what do you think about that when you hear that?
First off, love the transparency. I think that's the biggest thing. I think that's the right call. You know what I'm saying? Like, I think you have the guys and the bones of the team, the structure that you need. There's no need to go out there and technically, I guess, waste money when you already have a solid core group. And I think that's kind of what it is at this point. Like, we everybody wants that 5-star guy that, definitely has proven himself in college. And don't get me wrong, it's great, but sometimes we've seen it in the past, especially the years before the national championship run. They got gritty, hardworking players, and sometimes they weren't, the 5 stars, but they were going to lay it out all on the line for you. And also the price tag was a little bit less, which I think, these are college kids. You're not trying to, it is a business at the end of the day. So you're not trying to you're trying to spend the least amount of money as possible. But I think at this point, I think like there's just no point to go out there, and it'd be a waste of money to go out there and spend big bucks on players you already have. Yeah, those guys are great. It'd be great to go after them, but I think we're fine. We're fine with what we're at, and I think that's a perfect thing for Tom to say, to kind of stop the buzz from some fans that are asking for maybe a little too much.
Yeah, I almost, as a joke, I almost said something to like Tom, like, "Hey man, like give us a little something so that we can continue to do portal shows, so we can create a little buzz for UConn fans." But no, but what I loved about the comments is, before then he says, and I'm paraphrasing, we are ecstatic about our 10 core players. He said, I don't think we could have done a better job bringing guys back. So their whole philosophy from the jump is to retain the majority players on their team, the guys who they feel like can maintain that UConn culture, and then add players in the portal that they feel are going to make impact, the immediate needs, and then also bring in an inflection of talent like the 3 freshmen that are coming in. So
Right.
That's a big part of it too. It's like, I think sometimes people get a little squirrely about, well, we need to get more guys because we need to compete with all these other teams, and forget that this is a team that just won 2 out of the last 3 national championships and took Florida, who won it, to the brink in round 2.
I completely agree. And the other thing too is, you mentioned UConn culture. There's only certain types of players, certain types of guys with the mindset and a skill set that can play for Dan Hurley. Let's be real. Like, he looks for guys that there's specific traits that he finds, and we saw it this year. Aiden Mahaney, people thought he was going to fit that trait. He just didn't. Yep. And coming into the season, people were happy, with that pickup, but it didn't work out. So even if you go after a guy that's proven himself at a different program, it does not mean it's going to transcribe perfectly over to the Huskies. It just doesn't. They're an interesting program, and you need a specific player to do so. So, like I said, I think Hurley knows exactly what he's doing, and I think the pieces are in place.
Yeah, no, without a doubt. So we're going to take a very quick break, and then we're going to come back and listen to more of some Tom Moore comments. Then we'll get into scheduling news. Have a game at Madison Square Garden close to Christmas, right around finals, I'm sure, and then another Ross in the fold down the stretch. Jayden's brother was on an official visit. We'll come back right after the break.
Big East Energy. Ryan Gresh here with the Feel Good Lab. And the same tools that we use to help elite athletes like Hassan Diarra, Nika Mule, and our very own Cam Spencer are the same things that we use to help people like you and I. people that want to optimize their overall health, feel a little bit younger, or are suffering from a chronic condition. And it's all about reducing inflammation, improving the nutrients in our body, and fixing our gut. And the way that we do that is not through a one-size-fits-all model. Everything is personalized. We offer products that are plant-based, natural, and help you identify the root cause. And oftentimes, we're looking at what's going into our body. So we have a food inflammation test, a gut microbiome test, so that we can treat you like an individual human that you are. And so the thing that we're the most excited about is actually connecting with you. Whether you're a UConn fan or not, please reach out, call us. We'd love to talk with you and see how we can help. Best in health.
Love that. Yeah, if you are in the market for anything that falls under the Feel Good Lab, they do a phenomenal work with like they just talked these gut microbiome tests, really kind of help to see what's going inside your body, but also just like these creams that help, us old folks. And then as you get older, Bella, you'll probably need it down the stretch. So maybe Mother's Day, Father's Day is coming around the corner. You can hook up your family, go to feelgoodlab.com and use the promo code Big East Energy for 15% off your first purchase. All right, Tom Moore, GM of the UConn Huskies. What about fan expectations? I'm just going to let this speak for itself and then get your thoughts.
These guys, I think our fans need to understand these next 4 or 5 people that we bring in, and I've been thinking a lot about this weekend in advance of this call. They're going to look drastically different than maybe any other recruits that have come through UConn in the terms of who they're being recruited by and what their profile is. You could make a case that pretty much every kid who's come in on scholarship in the last 30, 40 years has been probably recruited by a lot of high major schools, and it's been an intense recruiting battle for us to try to win. Even for the guys who ended up falling into 11, 12, or 13th man role and only lasting a year or two and then transferring. On the way in, it was a fight.
So what are your initial thoughts on that?
I think I like what he's saying. I think it kind of alludes to what I was saying earlier. It takes a specific, like type of person. These guys are, like you said, have been like he said, have been recruited by a lot of other high-end schools. They deserve to be here for sure, without a doubt. I don't know. What do you think? I'm gonna swing it back to you, Mark. What do you feel?
I think he's because it reeks of, all right. So every like the way recruiting works is like you cast a really wide net, and then you break it down to who are your priorities. You got to go back to the guys who are not priorities because they're not going to play a ton. But you're a Patriots fan, right?
Absolutely.
When it comes to the draft, some of the best picks that GMs make are in rounds 4, 5, 6, and 7, and then also with the undrafted guys. So this is what I think. This is the crux of his job right now. These 3 to 4 players is to find players that can back up, even if it's like a third string players, just in case. Listen, knock on wood, UConn men have not suffered too many injuries. Had a big one with Liam, and Alex had concussion last year. So outside of those, there hasn't been like catastrophic things like what happens on the women's side, right? If that happens, you still need to have guys that can compete at a high level. They may not be stars. They may not be. This is where you make your money, so to speak. If you're the GM of UConn, you're the GM of any organization. You make your money by finding these diamonds in the rough. Maybe it's a kid that's undersized, like an undersized power forward. Like one of the guys that was linked to UConn, actually was more linked to Rutgers, is Amari Monroe, who is the MAC player of the year. I think he would have been an impact player, but that's the type of profile, like a 6'6" power forward that is not 6'10" that can stretch the floor like you're typically looking for. But he's gonna bust his ass in practice. He's gonna give Alex and Terrace and Eric Ryba a ton of heat in practice. And then one of the things that he talked about, and I don't have this in the audio, his number one priority is to find a third string center, like a backup center, because this way, and I'm not speaking out of turn here, this is straight from coaching staff and themselves. They love Eric Ryba, but if he comes in as a freshman and isn't ready to play, like just by happenstance, not because I think that's going to happen, they need to have a guy that can give them minutes and not feel like they're stuck. So that's a big part of this too. So it's finding these backups, finding these kids that are going to come in and want to compete for minutes, but may not actually get them. That's a hard sell, but I think it's something that they're going to have to get.
Yeah, I agree. I think competition's important too. Like you said, like making guys give guys a run for their money, and make them, earn their spot. Like you said, he did allude to the third string center stuff, targeting somebody like that. I also saw he mentioned looking for another wing, another combo guard, and then possibly a combo forward. So again, I just love the transparency from Tom. I think that it's important, and I think that at least it like you said, it doesn't get us as excited for next year because we can't exactly be excited about some guys that are in the portal right now, but at the very least we know what to expect, and I think that's kind of like soothing for some fans in a way. So I think it's important, and I think right now he's doing a perfect job.
I mean, there's some players that I don't think would if I look at the portal, like just literally going into the portal, I'm literally staring at On3's portal report right here. You could go and get a kid that played at Queens College named like Malcolm Wilson. That's a 6'11" center who's a senior who has 1 year left of eligibility that wants to, maybe, I don't know anything about him. Maybe he's a great locker room guy. You could potentially bring in, a kid like, he went to Duke, but he was like a 0-star recruit. So he was kind of a walk-on. His name is Stanley Borden. He's got 1 year of eligibility. He's a 6'11", 250-pound kid. That's somebody that you could bring in with no, big NIL packages or anything that can come with it. Then there's another guy. I don't necessarily know if this is someone that they would go after because he's got a little more high NIL value, but a guy like Josh Gray, who played at Missouri, who is a Brooklyn kid who went to Putnam Science Academy, which is in Connecticut. These are guys that you can start to potentially look at. Papa Conte is a South Kent school, South Kent, Connecticut. He went to Pittsburgh. So there's guys in the portal. Like, I think that's the thing that is so interesting about all of this. Eddie Lampkin, who was at Syracuse, who was a 0-star recruit out of college, and he's a 6'11", 270-pound center. Like, get some guys who have some beef that can bang around in practice, potentially play a little minutes if someone's hurt. I think that's the angle that they're going.
I agree. I couldn't have said it better.
All right. If Florida was coming to Stores and not playing at Madison Square Garden, I love when UConn plays at MSG, but we play there in the Big East tournament. What do you think the atmosphere would be like inside of Gampel Pavilion for the fans and for the students in particular if this game was played December 9th in Stores?
I think the biggest thing, I think it'd be $2 beer night. I think the marketing team would make it $2 beer night to get the fans a little extra rowdy. And I think the beers would have sold out in record time. And basically, to put that in perspective, I just think it would be packed. Ted's would be packed before the game. Not thousands, but a lot of, I think, former UConn players would be in the building. I just think it would be just a cool feel, you play a lot of these Big East teams, and don't get me wrong, the St. John's games, they get rowdy, the Marquette games, the Creighton games, they get exciting, but a school like Florida, that would just be insane. It would be a mess trying to get tickets. I think there would be some people needing to call Joey bail bonds. I definitely think that. I just think it would be insane. It would probably have to be a Friday night game. Like, the roof would come off the place, and the roof's already not in the best shape. So it would be electric.
We won't send this to Dave Benedict. We don't need anything more on his plate as far as the fixing the roof. No, I agree. I just look back to, let me just put this up a little bit. See that Shabazz Napier right there? All I can think about is with Florida. All I can think of is the buzzer beater he hit in Gampel 2013, I believe, the year. I would play it, but I don't want to have us get kicked off for copyright. So, but the point is like, I want to see those moments more in college basketball. And unfortunately, because of the money that's involved, we end up seeing more neutral sites, which suck. And I'm not sticking up for any other schools, we try to do home and homes. We went to Texas last year. They're coming back this year. I think we did the Big 12, Big East battle, played Baylor. Kansas never returned. I think there needs to be, whether it's us or whether it's another high major that just says, you know what, this year, fuck it. I'm going to go and play 5 teams, not 5, but like maybe 2 or 3 teams on the road, and almost like not sacrifice yourself, but like that's the type of stuff we need. I want Gonzaga on campus. I don't want Gonzaga at Madison Square Garden.
Yeah.
I want, I want, USC played UConn at Hartford for the women, and that was a huge game. It was sold out. Like if you brought Duke to the Civic Center, XL Center,
yeah,
to how old I am, then that's a huge ticket. Like and it's never going to happen because people don't want to have those marquee places go without a game. They don't want to have Madison Square Garden or like the United Center in Chicago or one of these places that you can get big time money and sell corporate sponsorships and stuff like that. So I just think that that's what's missing on this side. And I honestly, I think the only way it would happen is if they throw an NIL angle to it. So like maybe there's prize money for these games. I don't know. Maybe.
I don't hate it. I don't hate it at all. And Mark, the other thing too is this is where we spark, I think, the ACC merger and the Big 12 merger, because that's when you would play Duke probably twice a year, alternately, because the conference is so big, so you don't know how often you play them. The UNCs of the world, like it would still be you get to play those teams. So I just think that's some food for thought there to think about. We're talking about we want to get some of these schools at home. At our home, we don't want stores south or whatever, but yeah, I think that I don't hate the prize money talks. I don't know if that's something that even like could that happen? Like I don't even know, but I definitely would like some of these games to be at stores because it's easy for me to get to. So
I mean, it definitely can happen. Like think about it from this perspective. If you play a game at Madison Square Garden, you're getting. I'm pretty sure this is how it works. Maybe I'm wrong, and people will be like, "You're stupid. You don't know what you're talking about." But the idea is that you're making money because you're doing a revenue share with the other school. But then maybe you're selling out suites. You're selling out. I don't know if you get a take on the concessions. However, it works. You make more money doing it at Madison Square Garden than you do at stores. But if you were to put a NIL valuation on it and say, okay, this kind of out of conference game, this home and home is sponsored by Mark D'Amelia. You know what I mean? Like where he essentially funds it. And if the Duke team wins, then they kind of take money from the NIL pool. And if our team wins, then our guys get the cash, but also the school gets money too. So like there's absolutely got to be a way to do it. Like everyone else is figuring out creative ways to kind of make some money off of this stuff. So if we're gonna bastardize the NCAA and essentially say these guys are student athletes when they're not, they're just students who play a professional sport on campus, then might as well incentivize it for everybody else so you can stay on campus versus going to New York.
I agree.
All right, real quick, Jayden Ross's brother Jacob was in for a visit. Anybody talking about that, or is that kind of just like low key?
I think it's pretty low key. I'll be honest. I don't think there's any buzz around that that I've heard about. But one thing I'll say is I don't hate it. I just think like I don't know if you saw. I think the news dropped like yesterday. Patrick Mahomes' half brother got like a tryout with the Kansas City Chiefs. That's kind of what it reminds me of. It's like
I wouldn't go that far.
Well, I don't want to take anything away from Jacob Ross. Don't get me wrong. I don't want to take anything away from him. He played at Minnesota, I believe. Like he was a solid player. I think a 3-star. But I do think that I don't know. I think it'll be interesting. I don't hate it, but I want to hear more your take on that because I think that's your forte.
Well, yeah, he's not in school yet. He got an offer to Minnesota. He was set on that. He decommitted. There was a coaching change, so now he's considering UConn because like like any team, like if I was a coach and I had a really good kid and his brother wasn't as good or as highly touted, but has some of the same traits, 6'5", lean, long, 170 pounds, the whole deal. I think that's kind of what the process is. But also, we talked about this pre-show. You kind of already know what you're going to get. Jayden's a really great person. He works his ass off. Dan talks about him constantly being a guy that could really pop if he starts to figure it out. So I think that's part of the reason why Jacob's in the mix, like for next year. And maybe that's just a developmental piece where he can come in and learn and then he transfers out after a couple of years, maybe. But I do think it's a solid kind of in the same mold of what Tom Moore's talking about building a culture and not always figuring out that you're going to get one and dones. I think that's what Jacob is.
I think, listen, I don't hate it. Maybe now that you say it, maybe I did go a little far with the Patrick Mahomes comparison. I think that I like that he's on the radar, and I think the other thing is his ticket probably isn't going to be insanely high for whatever you have to offer him for NIL. So I'm excited. Listen, I'm not going to hate it if you got two brothers on the same team. Like, that's cool. I think that's cool, and I think that's fun. So why not give it a try? And like you said, if he fits the culture, then I'll give anybody a try. If I trust Dan, if Dan likes him, I like him. So
that's the wonderful thing about having such a great staff is when something happens, you just go, hey, if they're bringing a guy in, you gotta love it. You can hate on it, but you kind of look stupid because I don't think anyone knows basketball more than Dan Hurley and the UConn staff.
Very true.
All right. That's another episode of the Hoops Capital Pod with Bella Tamano. I'm Mark Zanetto. It's UConn, baby.
Let's get it. Let's get it. Let's get it. Let's get it.
See you next time.
Yeah. UConn, baby. Home of the champions.